Coming up today on Guts, Grit, and Great Business.
I actually have an acronym that I teach entrepreneurs called the Road to Joy. And ROAD is an acronym. So R is for relish. If you relish it, if you love it, if it fills you with joy and happiness, keep doing it. And if you don't, then it needs to, then whatever task it is that's on your plate needs to move into one of the other three categories, O, A, and D for Road to Joy. So R is relish, but O is outsource, A is automate, and D is delegate. So you get it off your plate as quickly as possible, because really what people come to be with you about is your enthusiasm, your joy, your happiness.
The adventure of entrepreneurship and building a life and business you love, preferably at the same time, is not for the faint of heart. That's why Heather Pierce Campbell is bringing you a dose of guts, grit, and great business stories that will inspire and motivate you to create what you want in your business and life. Welcome to the Guts, Grit, and Great Business Podcast, where endurance is required. Now here's your host, the legal website warrior, Heather Pierce Campbell.
Alrighty. Welcome. I am Heather Pierce Campbell, the legal website warrior. I'm an attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington. Welcome to another episode of Guts, Grit, and Great Business. So today I have, a guest that you are going to love, Kimberly. I loved her when I met her. So Kimberly, we first connected, I think it was through a mutual friend. You were running your summit, right? The Entrepreneur Rocket Fuel Summit. And your energy is just so fun. You were such a pro. I loved being a part of your summit. So I'm super excited to have you here today. For folks who don't know Kimberly, we've got Kimberly Hobscheid, and Kimberly is a master connector. She is a joint venture super connector. She gets entrepreneurs the stages and connections they need to stop being overlooked and explosively grow their revenue and reach. She is an award-winning international inspirational public speaker, best-selling author, audiobook producer, and 6-time entrepreneur. She is also the creator of Entrepreneurs Rocket Fuel, an active community of entrepreneurs looking to contribute, connect, and grow with other entrepreneurs. So some fun highlights about Kimberly is that she's a mother of 2, also an adventure seeker, which I can attest to because she just explained to me how she is traveling full-time during COVID. We'll get into that. She has hiked sections of the Pacific Crest Trail and navigated Class 4 rapids with one of Costa Rica's female Olympic medal winning whitewater champions. Her motto is live life out loud. Kimberly, I'm so happy to have you here today. Thank you for coming on.
Heather, it's such a pleasure. I just love being with you. I love your energy. I love how you show up in the world. And I love this show. I think it's going to be really amazing to share with what's going on in the world with your audience. But Guts, Grit, and Great Business is a great way to start things.
Oh, well, thank you. You know, it's been really fun because, and I've mentioned this several times, I launched the podcast during COVID, right? It was like one of the ways to harness some creative energy that I had. And it's been a really, really fun way to connect and really get to know a lot more about some folks that are in the industries that I serve and that I work with and that are really, fabulous industry leaders and have some really interesting things going on. So I'm super happy to have you here and can't wait to dig in. Now, one of the first questions that I like to ask people is about how they got into entrepreneurship, right? Not everybody chooses to be an entrepreneur. So talk to us a little bit about what that looked like for you.
Sure. So I will share my story about how I got into full-time entrepreneurship. I actually, like many of your listeners, I did what they told us to do, which is I went to college, I got a good degree, I graduated, and I started working at a corporate job that had health insurance. And I started at the bottom, and I worked my way up, and I got promoted, and I got raises, and I got more territory, and I started at the bottom and ended up about 17 years later as an executive director for a Fortune 1000 company. Actually, rare enough, I stayed with the company, transferred several times, but absolutely stayed with the same company for 17 years, which is very unusual. And about 15 of them were really good. I actually really enjoyed climbing up the corporate ladder and doing those things that, they told us to do. And most of it was really, really good. And I learned a lot. But the last two, they just weren't all that and a bag of chips. And at 15 years, I actually did put in my resignation. I knew that I didn't want to do this for the rest of my life. And I had another calling. I had climbed up a ladder that I didn't really even want to be on anymore. And that's a really hard place to be. I had climbed up into what a lot of people know as golden handcuffs. Now, golden handcuffs, for those of you who don't know, or it's an expression that means basically you're making a lot of money, but you don't really want to do it anymore, but you're making enough money so that it doesn't make sense to leave. But your heart isn't in it anymore. It's a very difficult position to be in. So I had resigned, and they had offered me another position. I got another transfer. I got another opportunity. I got more territory. And then I stayed. I probably shouldn't have. But then after another 2 years, I trained my replacement, and we parted as friends. And I said, I need to do anything else. I know that I'm not supposed to die with this on my tombstone, right? This is not it for me. So I actually left, and fortunately for me, you asked when did I start in entrepreneurship? Long before that. I actually had some businesses on the side, and I'd been fortunate in business enough to have grown some small businesses large enough to be able to sell them, which doesn't happen very often. And so that was very fortunate. So I knew a lot about entrepreneurship when I decided to become a full-time entrepreneur. But launching into it is a whole new feeling, just like, okay, I've jumped off the ladder, now fly, be free. What am I going to do? Right. So I went to my friends and family and I said, what do you think I should do for this full-time business? I want to create a 7-figure business. And they said, well, you were so good at what you did at corporate. Why don't you do that? And I was like, oh yeah, sure. Right. I'm good at that. I should do that. So I created a business, and I started it, and I hired employees, and I had payroll and contracts and customers and responsibilities and all kinds of deadlines and all kinds of things that a business has. And in 18 months, I had grown it to $1 million business. It had over $1 million in revenue. And I turned around and I went, oh no, I have just built my own jail cell. I felt like I had been hit by a Mack truck. It was like that fast that it came on me. Like I just built a whole business doing exactly what I wanted to stop doing. And now I'm in it. Now I'm responsible for other people's paychecks and delivery. And I don't want to do it anymore. And I had what Brene Brown calls a spiritual awakening / breakdown. Do you know who Brene is? She's a TEDx speaker.
Oh, she's fabulous.
But it was a big crisis in my life. And I actually went out onto a literal mountaintop to try to find the answer. Of course, it wasn't up there. And I came back down, and I'm not just an entrepreneur, I'm also a mom. So when I walked in, my 15-year-old son met me at the door and he said, Mom, I've got a problem. And I thought, great, someone else's problem to focus on.
Right. We're good at those.
Right?
We're good at those.
Like anybody else's problems other than our own. Let's solve that, right? So I was like, fantastic. What's your problem, sweetheart? And he said, I'm going into summer and I'm going to be 15 and a half the whole summer. And 15 and a half is a crappy age to enter summer because you're too young to get a summer job. All of his friends were getting summer jobs. And he said, and I'm too old to go back to summer camp because that's boring and stupid because I'm 15 and a half now and that's boring and stupid, right? And not only that, he said, and I'm taller than all the camp counselors. And it's true, he was a tall guy, right? So I was like, yeah, I get that. But you know what? You're never too young or too old or too tall or too short to do. That's be an entrepreneur. So why don't you and I create a business around what you love doing? Just anything that you really enjoy doing. Let's just create a business around it and just make some money doing what you love doing. And he was like, can we do that? And I said, sure, let's do that, right? So we put all his stuff into Google about like what he liked to do. Well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. He loves being on stage. He does impromptu speaking. He was great at improv. He read books to the younger students at school. He loved kids. So we put all that stuff in, and out popped, why don't you be an audiobook narrator? He said, Mom, can we do that? And I said, Sure, I don't know why not, right? So we bought some stuff on Amazon. We actually created a whole business and he loved it. We loved it. I taught him all about entrepreneurship. He taught me all about Snapchat and the social media channels I knew nothing about, all kinds of stuff. We helped each other. We built this business and it was around what we loved. We loved doing it. We got so much business and so much came out of that energy of that love, that passion, that fun, that joy, that happiness. So much came out of that we just radiated it. And because of that, we attracted tons of business, and the business that came flying in, we couldn't even handle. We had more business. We had more books than we could read. We ended up having to teach a course to locals in the area about how to become an audiobook narrator so we could hire them to do our books for us. And we loved teaching. So we had this other little offshoot. We created a whole business around teaching people to become audiobook narrators. Then we taught, then we had another one about how to market audiobooks. So we built this whole business around this engine of the fun and the joy and the happiness around it. And so at that moment, I realized that he had really rescued me. He had saved me from just doing what I was good at and changed it to, I knew that I would never create another business that I didn't love ever again. And I would never continue to do a business I didn't love. I did it for 2 years at corporate, and then I did it in my own business. And I realized that life's too short, man. You got to do what you love.
There's so much I love about that story. And it highlights how, in my mind, I'm thinking about how many ways things go wrong where we end up working in a position, like you said, that is either making money or just feels like the thing that we should be doing. And it's not really the thing that we want to be doing, or that where our heart can really soar. Talk to me though, in your experience, because I love that, first of all, you guys were able to start something that felt fun and it stayed fun, right?
Yeah.
Because I think some people start something that feels fun and it doesn't stay fun once they get into actually doing the work required to make it a business. So how do you hold on to the fun? How did you guys manage to grow it and do all the things and hold on to the fun?
Well, I want to say that I did not seed Heather with this question, but it was a beautiful segue. I did not give her that question, but it was beautiful because I actually have an acronym that I teach entrepreneurs called the Road to Joy. And ROAD is an acronym. So R is for relish. If you relish it, if you love it, if it fills you with joy and happiness, keep doing it. And if you don't, then it needs to, then whatever task it is that's on your plate needs to move into one of the other three categories, O, A, and D, for Road to Joy. So R is relish, but O is outsource, A is automate, and D is delegate. So you get it off your plate as quickly as possible, because really what people come to be with you about is your enthusiasm, your joy, your happiness. I mean, if you, Heather, you teach people about how to be free of the legal issues, right? How to make sure that they can run a business without getting trapped in some of that garbage, right? And if we come to you and you're like, yeah, it's horrible, there's a lot of stuff, it's super complicated, you're going to hate it. Like, we'd be like, I'm going to go find somebody else, right? But you come in and you're like, I got you. This is totally perfect. And we're going to fix it so that everything's going to be good. You're going to love it. It's going to be amazing. That's why people buy from you. Because of your enthusiasm, because that enthusiasm that radiates out from you, it exudes confidence. People want to be in your zone. People want to be in that sunshine and that light. And that is what we found, that when we were really successful, it was because we were focused on what we loved doing. When it got too much, like we could not do we could not spend more time in the closet recording audiobooks anymore. Like, we just needed some oxygen, right? We went out and taught other people how to do it, and they were like, oh my God, this is so fun. And we're like, yes, it is. Isn't it fun? And we were like super excited about it again. And when you get that enthusiasm, people want to be a part of that, and they want to be in your glow. And that is what makes you magnetically attractive. So the Road to Joy keeps you there by saying, if I love it, if I go in and I love recording audiobooks, keep doing it for as long as it's fun. And then one day, if it's not fun, do something else. And if it's not fun for like a week or a month or a year, do anything else, right? Like, don't do it anymore. Go do something else. And that's really it. And you need to outsource, automate, or delegate the rest. So for us, we did a little of everything, right? We automated all of our email campaigns, and we automated our announcements announcements that new books were coming out, new audiobooks were coming out. That was a whole automated process now. We click like 3 buttons and out goes an announcement to all of our listeners about a new audiobook that's been released. We automated our website. We automated a lot of stuff, right? But then there's other stuff that you can't automate. Like, okay, well, we have a new product. Now we have to put that up on the website. Well, now I delegate that. I have a VA and she's amazing. And getting a virtual assistant is the best move you'll ever make as an entrepreneur. Really, really, even better than hiring your children. It's way better to hire a VA because they do what you tell them to do. And getting it off your plate is the best favor you can do yourself. Because if you go in and you're like, oh my gosh, I'll never get out from under this email, or oh no, I've got to do my taxes, or oh no, I have to do invoicing, or whatever it is you hate. I mean, some people love invoicing. I meet people and they're like, I can't wait to do my invoices this month. You know, like, great. If you love it and it fills you with joy, keep doing it. If you don't and it fills you with trepidation and gloom and doom, get it off your plate as soon as possible onto somebody else's.
I love that. And I agree. I think people get bogged down in the doing and it really can take them out of the joy. I'm curious, what do you say to people that say, no, don't, you can't build a business based around doing something that you love. You need to build a business that makes money first and then take that money. You know how you've probably heard the advice, like,
yeah.
Right?
Okay. Yeah, but go get a job because you have health insurance that way. Because if you want to make money to go on 2 weeks of vacation a year, a job is a great way to do that. You're done at 5:00. You go home at night. You can spend time with your family. You get regular vacations. You can call in sick. No big deal. Go do that. They pay your taxes. They pay your insurance. That's a good idea. Go get a job. But do not do that as an entrepreneurship. Because if you're doing an entrepreneurship that you hate just so that you can have time off, whoosh, that's a lot of time. Because especially starting a business, it can be 3 to 5 years before it turns a major profit where it's generating enough income to pay for your bills. And imagine building a business large enough to pay for your kids' college education. That can be a daunting task. Like if you're like, okay, I got this now. I got to pay me $100,000 a year, and I have to earn enough to be able to save $25,000 to $40,000 a year for 4 years. And I got 4 kids. Well, I only have 2, but if you have that, like that's a lot of money. Then you're like, aha, now I know what I need to charge. That's not a small side business where I'm knitting quilts or anything, right? This is a big, major business, right? So if you're going to build that business, that's a daunting task. If you don't love what you're doing, you're going to be spending 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week working a $30,000 a year job, doing like a lot of work, not what you love. Absolutely not. I'm not in favor of that. But if you want to do that, go get a job. And there's plenty of people that will hire you to work from 9 to 5 and do a great job for them. And you're done on the weekend.
No, I'm so glad you said that because I do agree the amount of momentum that it takes to clear some of the hurdles that you have to clear in entrepreneurship. Like you don't get over those if you don't care about what you're doing to the point that you're willing to do what it takes to clear those hurdles, right?
You're totally right. Absolutely. And the joy and the happiness is what muscles you through some of those bad times. Now, I'm not saying I don't have bad days at work.
Right.
I'm not saying that.
Right.
Everybody does. Whether you're working a job or whether you're working in entrepreneurship, there are days where you're like, whoosh, that was a gut punch, right? Like there are days and there can be days in a row, right? And it could be a week or two. But if it's beyond that, you really need to, especially if you're an entrepreneur, take a long, hard look at it and say, what is it that's dragging me down? I know that I can be 10 times more effective if I'm not dragged down. So how can I get that off my plate and be 10 times more effective? Right? If I have to hire a VA, and you can hire a VA in, overseas or whatever your beliefs about that are, it's totally fine. You can hire a VA in the United States right now for $20 an hour. And if you don't think your time is worth $20 an hour, you
shouldn't run a business. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying everybody has money to burn when they're starting a business, but I am saying, take a long, hard look at that and figure out, like, if I could get that off my plate, give it to somebody else and then be 10 times more effective doing what I love, having fun and being in the joy and the happiness of it. Great. My dad actually accidentally taught me that lesson when I was very young, the opposite of that. I overheard him with my little 7-year-old brain. And he was talking to a friend about his boat. And we were fortunate enough to have a really nice sailboat that we visited on the weekends, right? And he would say, well, Bill, you have this great boat. Why don't you do a business with it? Like, why don't you take people out on pleasure cruises? And then you could do it all the time. You could be on that boat all the time. And he said, oh, no, that's my hobby and I love it. If I turned it into a business, then it would be a job and I wouldn't love it anymore. And my little 7-year-old brain flipped that switch. And I was like, aha, you can either make money or have fun, but you can't do both at the same time. And a lot of people got that message from their parents or from a friend who meant, well, my dad didn't mean anything by it. He loved his job, like he was an entrepreneur as well. He loved a lot of parts of his job, not all of them, but it wasn't a sailboat.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that a lot of people get tied up in that, and you just have to break free of that and just say, okay, what if I did only do the things I loved? What would be left, and how could I get rid of that as soon as possible? That's a really good methodology.
Mm-hmm. No, it's true. And you raised this really important point that I think, and then it leads me back to wanting to ask a question that you were talking about before, but this idea that we can't make money and do what we love at the same time. How many people, especially in the creative space, and I'm just going to say that if you are an entrepreneur, like you probably, part of you lives in the creative space regardless of what you're doing, because entrepreneurship is all around creating a business that solves problems, right? Hopefully in a unique way that doesn't already exist in the marketplace, or if it does, you're doing it with your own spin, right? So I fundamentally believe that like most entrepreneurs are actually highly creative. And so many of us get told, right, oh, well, you can't do the fun thing to make money. Like you have to do the hard work and the other stuff to make money.
So that's a really interesting point. Now, I want to stipulate that there are many people out there who are like, oh, I love knitting and I want to knit and I want to make a ton of money knitting. And that what you're doing, producing knitting products, may not generate $100,000 a year plus enough to put your kids into college. Like it may not generate that. And that may be what you love doing. So there's a difference there, because what we need to look at is market research. Will the market pay for you to be able to knit 5 hours a day and make $200,000 a year? Maybe not, right? Maybe it just won't pay that. So you might have to look at another aspect of it, or learn, or figure out how you can help other people learn to knit, or how, like have passive income while you do that. Maybe you have rental properties or something else, that's feeding that income. But so I don't want to just put it out there that, oh, do what you love and forget the rest. What I do want to say is, it's possible to love what you do, love the aspect of your job, and then take the other aspects that you don't love so much and have other people do them. For example, I don't do my own dentistry. I don't know if anybody else out there does that. I don't do my own. I hire that out to other people, right? I'm not my own CPA. I hire that out, right? And it's just a matter of being like, okay, I also need to hire out my invoicing because I don't want to do invoicing, or I don't want to do bookkeeping, or I don't want to do Facebook ads, or I don't want to do those things, and go and look just like you would for a dentist to make sure you have a good one, and then let them rip, and if it doesn't make sense, then stop doing it. And if it does make sense, keep doing it.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and the practical advice, and I'm so glad you mentioned this, because I agree that if you're going to build a business, do something that you love, but not everything that you love can you build a business around, right? So it's about, yes, it's about choosing, like being really, because you can't, and I've said this before, you can't skip business fundamentals regardless of what you're doing. You have to look at the marketplace. You have to understand whether there's a demand. You have to, some people, especially if they're really phenomenal artists, they can create the marketplace, but most of us can't, right? And so I think that that piece of advice of like really examining how is it that you either choosing something that you love that you can build a business around, or choosing within the construct of a business, what can you do well that you love, right? Because there's kind of two ways to get into that position of like really being joyful about the work that you're doing. And I think it does make a difference in the success of the business.
I often coach people that are in business right now, like in a job. If you have a job and they're like, I don't love it anymore, I want to quit and I want to be an entrepreneur. Well, that's a big job, right? Like there's a big cliff in between those two things. Not bad and possible. and great, but it's bigger than you think it is, right? So I'll often coach them like, well, what do you love about your current job? Go to your boss and ask if you can do more of that. Like, go do more. Like, and bosses love that. I mean, who doesn't love when you come in and you're like, I really, really love teaching this to other people. Can I do more of that? Or I really, really love working directly with the clients. Can I do more of that? If you have an employee that comes to you and asks you for those things, you're going to be like, yes, how can I make that happen for Heather? Right? So the first thing that you should do is find out how you can do more of what you love in your existing company, right? And get paid for that, right? And then the more you do it, the more you'll realize, do I really love this or not? And if you do, fantastic, right? Keep doing that. And if you don't, at least you didn't jump off a cliff and start doing it yourself. And, yikes.
Right. It's true. There's a big space between a job and, liking something either about that job or something else that you do in your life and actually going into business for yourself. And on that note, I'd love for you to revisit the point that you decided to leave your golden handcuffs, right? Just in case we have listeners who are in that place or who are in a job or are in the corporate world and they're really wanting to get into entrepreneurship. What was the point that you reached where you just knew you had to make a decision?
Well, I realized for me, it was that I was in an executive director position. There was a lot of politics that I didn't really agree with. And I thought, I had a lot of influence as I was climbing the ladder. And when I got to the top of the ladder, I felt like, wow, there just isn't enough of me influence to go to be able to make this the company that I would be proud to say I'm working for continuously. And they didn't do anything wrong. I mean, it was just like, it's just not me, right? It doesn't fit. I felt like I was wearing somebody else's shoes or, it wasn't me. And I really wanted to, there were days where I was like, I'm quitting, forget this. But then there was really a time where I was like, no, seriously, I don't want to do this with this company anymore. And I know that there's more for me out there. I know I'm not supposed to only do this for the rest of my life. I did have sort of like an awareness that like, do you want to die with this on your tombstone? And that was a very scary thing for me. In our business, when you get anybody that climbs to the top, like, do you really want to be known only for this? And you're carrying somebody else's banner. As an entrepreneur, you're carrying your own, right? It's not for everybody, but for me, going in and saying, I don't want to carry somebody else's banner to my grave. That was it. But then, of course, I didn't want to leave them in a situation. I was a key employee and I didn't want to leave them in a situation that was not great. Yeah. So I did train my replacement and left on very good terms with a really good separation. They asked me back several times and I knew that I was in a safe place. I didn't just up and quit one day in a huff, but I did know that it was the right thing for me to move on. It just, for me, it was.
Yeah. Was the timing right, or do you wish you had done it earlier?
Oh, looking back, I think I was probably scared. I probably should have left 2 years earlier, but I wouldn't have known as much as I'd known, and I wouldn't have felt as safe as I did. But sometimes people stay and then they get fired because they don't love it anymore. And then they're like, screw them, kind of, I don't know if I can say that, but darn it, like I'm not, I don't love it anymore. So I'm going to make them pay for my unhappiness. And that, as a boss, is a really great place to get yourself fired, right? Yeah. You are going to get fired if you come in every day with that attitude. As a boss, I could watch it happening with certain employees and I'm like, nope, I'm going to move before you do, right? Like, I'm going to make this move before you have a choice.
Well, and even if it's not an express attitude of like intentionally, underperforming, I think if you do have that attitude or belief, you probably can't help but underperform, right? If you're just not enjoying what you do. And so it's going to be relevant one way or the other, for sure. Yeah. So talk to us about, so you made the leap, obviously you got into entrepreneurship. I love the story about helping your son create this business that was a lot of fun. What came next for you? Because you'd previously built a business that felt like handcuffs again, and you didn't want to do that. So after this endeavor with your son, what came next?
So right now, I actually, once I had that awakening, I did do the business with my son for a while, but I realized that I really wanted to help entrepreneurs create jobs or create businesses that they really loved that went to the 6-figure level, right? Because a lot of people are like, I get all my business by referral, or I'm a life coach and I have, one client and they're paying me $100 an hour once, so I'm in business, and it's and I don't mean to make fun. I don't. It's just that there's so much there that entrepreneurs don't face in terms of what's real about entrepreneurship. So fortunately, I've been an entrepreneur 6 times. I've been able to sell businesses, and I know what it takes in order to be able to grow a business. But a lot of what it takes is getting seen and getting heard and getting out there. And so now I run a business, Entrepreneurs Rocket Fuel, which is based on connecting people with the stages and the opportunities they need in order to get to that next level. Now, that next level may just be, I need to be able to be a real business. I need to hire a VA, or I need to get on stages, or I need to get to 6 figures, or I need to start scaling. I need to hire, a salesperson, whatever that next level is. That's kind of what we look at. But I'm a big believer in, going out there and making it fun and joyful, and not just forcing it to work because you think you got to hang on to it. Entrepreneurship is all about, I hate the word pivot, but all about pivoting, changing. Everything's a test. If it's not working, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It means this particular piece of your business didn't flesh out. You just need to try something else. And let's make that shift.
No, I love that. Well, and that, the concept of pivot, and I know people are really tired of that word right now, but the reality is that even before COVID, our job in business is to constantly be responding to the marketplace, responding to feedback that we get in our business about whether or not something is working, right? So it is a game of constant adjustments. And I don't think that there's anything different about this period. It's just more extreme, right? The contraction and the pressure is higher. And so I think people are having to really address that in bigger ways. What are you seeing? I'm curious because we're in the midst of COVID. You're doing some really interesting things, including a lot of travel. But what are you seeing for the folks that you are serving in business? Are they making big changes? Like how, and especially as it relates to this conversation around fun, right? How do you help people focus on the fun and what brings them joy, and also, right, build those fundamentals in their business?
Yeah. Well, I think the big one, since you brought up COVID, I think the big one is connection with other human beings, right? We are as human beings, I'll quote Brene Brown again, we are hardwired for connection. That's what we are here to do, is to connect to other human beings and our pets as well, I think. But yes, connect with other human beings. And COVID had put sort of a little bit of a wrench in the works, and a lot of people got depressed because of that. They're not able to go into their offices or meet clients or go to Starbucks and meet their friends or go to the networking meetings anymore. And that was very difficult. Fortunately for me, I was actually already deeply in the world of Zoom, and I did a lot of 3-day events. We did a lot of major events where we would bring 150 to 300 people into a room and have an event, give them value, and send them on their way. We did our first virtual 150 to 300 person event through one of the organizations that I work with. And it was a huge success because it was on Zoom and because people were craving that human connection, right? So just because you're not able to go drive and be somewhere or get on a plane and go somewhere doesn't mean that you can't connect with other human beings. And that is what we're all craving right now. So if you have an offering, getting out on a virtual stage. Now, virtual stages, people are like, oh, it's all Zoom calls, or I don't know, we've got like screen fatigue or whatever. I'm telling you right now, this is the best way to stay alive in business there is right now, is getting on Zoom and virtual stages. It could be podcasts like this one. Heather is creating a virtual stage for many of you who could come and have a wonderful conversation with this beautiful, amazing human being and get in front of her entire audience and be able to share your zone of genius, right? Podcasts, radio shows, TV shows, web summits, webinars, all kinds of ways to be able to get on stage in front of other people and get seen and heard so that your business doesn't have to falter during this time. I have never been so busy as I have been since COVID hit. I have had more business, more checks have been written, more PayPal invoices have been closed, more activities have happened, more events have happened since COVID happened. And that's because like this weekend, this is no joke. This is like off script, but this is no joke. This weekend, I have 2 back-to-back 3-day events. One is on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. One's on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I'm on both of them, like all 3 days. So I have 2 computers going at the same time for all 3 events. It's like really a very, very important time to be able to stay connected with other human beings.
I agree. And this piece about connection, it's interesting because people talk about Zoom fatigue and like, I haven't hit it yet. I mean, I get the sitting down part. I'm not a sitter. And so I always have a hard time sitting, even at live events, right? 3 days of sitting on your hind end at a 3-day event. It's tough. But so I can relate to the sitting, but the connection, like I can't get enough connection. And so I don't feel the Zoom fatigue. I mean, granted, I do a lot of connecting by phone as well. But absolutely, it's a massive opportunity to shift the way that we are able to do business. And it will teach us some things about how to move forward and do business and, have developed these skills. I think a lot of people had not gotten online to the extent they wanted to before COVID hit. And then they didn't have a choice, right? So a lot of people have been forced into this position of having to really figure out the online space. And it's partly why I made a big push last year to really help people get their online websites protected and get their online businesses all buckled up so that they could legitimately be there and be full on in their business and not be worried about, do they have these issues hanging out, right? So, but I think that, the opportunity to connect online and the myriad of ways we get to do it. Like you just listed all of the ways that you connect and that your clients connect, podcasts, summits, telesummit. I mean, and even the ways, because you're in the summit world, even the ways that summits are going down is changing and evolving and people are doing new things, even with summits, right? So like I have a friend who's running a summit right now and it's happening inside of a Facebook group. And I was like, oh, I've never seen a summit done that way, right? I'm used to like the summit platforms or them happening through a main website. And so it's really fun to see the ways that people are expanding online. For the folks that you are connecting with, talk to me about the range of experiences that you're seeing as far as, do you see people like you experiencing tremendous success during COVID, despite what's going on? And what's the difference? What are they doing differently from folks that are not?
Well, that's interesting you bring that up. And I don't think I've ever made this connection before, but because of where we started, it actually just popped into my mind that it's actually about the enthusiasm for it. So if you have somebody who is like, oh, Zoom is terrible and I don't want to, like, they're not going to be successful at business on Zoom or, or podcasts don't work or whatever. Like they're not going to be successful because they're putting that out into the universe, right? But conversely, the people who are like, let's try this. People are like, what are you trying? That sounds fun. I want to try it with you and tell me more, So I think that is really shaking things up. So it's about that. Do you have enthusiasm for it? Do you have joy for it? Do you have excitement for it? And then in that same vein, there are some people who are holding back because they're afraid, they're nervous, right? A lot of people will say, well, I'm scared to get on stage, or I've never done a Facebook Live. How do I do that? Or I'm an introvert. And I hear that quite a lot in my business right now. And I would give you guys hope and ladies hope in that chemically, that is something that's happening in your body, right? Your heart is beating faster when you're nervous. Your ears might be ringing when you're nervous. Your stomach might be doing flip-flops when you're nervous. And that is a chemical thing that's going on in your body. So you can be secure in saying, I'm not imagining this is really happening, right? But here's the cool thing, Heather. When you're excited, your ears start ringing and your heart starts beating faster and your stomach starts doing flips. So if you say, instead of saying, I'm nervous to get on stage, if you say, I'm excited to get on stage, your body feels exactly the same. But you know what that is? It's a mindset shift. You just shift into the belief that I'm excited to be on stage. This is an exciting thing. I'm excited to be talking to Heather Pierce Campbell on her podcast. Oh my gosh, I'm excited. And it's the same chemical feeling. It's the same reality that you're experiencing because your ears are ringing and your heart's beating faster and your stomach's doing flips and you're excited to get on stage. So I would suggest to those of you who say, I'm nervous to get on stage, to switch that and just do a little mindset work on that and be like, you know what? I think I'm excited to get on stage. And when you get there, then you know.
I love that. So, well, and going back to what you just said about the nerves, and especially for people who are introverts, I know we have plenty of introverts around, and I'm not one, but there are definitely times where I feel like, my energy might be a little lower. I'm distracted. Like I don't feel, 100% there. And so I understand a little bit kind of, some of the trepidation about showing up. But the other thing, because I do love speaking, my problem is harnessing the energy in a way that, doesn't have me just feeling too excitable. And I remember reading a book, I wish I could remember the name of it right now, but about, and maybe this is also a shift that people can make who feel some nerves around having to go live or show up online. Adrenaline can be a performance enhancer, right?
Oh,
It
yeah.
absolutely can actually help us do the very best job that we're there to do. And so even the experience of nerves, like you did the shift of nervous versus excited, can actually be a really, really positive, even physical symptom. And so same thing when I feel nerves. And I think, as a kid, I grew up playing classical piano. And I was just telling my son the other day, because every day he's begging me for stories from my childhood. I was telling him that my palms would get sweaty every time. It didn't matter if it was a performance, a competition. Like there was never a time that my palms did not get sweaty before I went on to play, right? It was just that physical reaction and the excitement that happened. But I just got to where I was like, oh yeah, there's my sweaty palms again. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't, I just realized it was par for the course and it was just part of what happens. And I think that's also one of the ways that we can approach going live online and dealing with nerves is like, oh yeah, there they are. And here we go.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just a symbol of where we're going. And this is just part of it. Yeah.
Totally.
Another way to get through it is by, I'm a big fan of a wingman or a wing woman. So if somebody tells me, oh, I've never done a Facebook Live and I'm afraid to, I'm like, great, let's do it now. Let's make that happen immediately. Right. And exactly. And we're live and I'm here with Heather and we're going to talk about this. And they're like, yeah, I guess we are. Then when it's over, they're like, oh my God, I just did my first Facebook Live. And that's it. Right.
That's hilarious. I love it.
And it could be your friend that does Facebook Live all the time, or it could be your kids, or kids are great about dragging you into stuff you don't want to do sometimes. So
totally.
Just let them do.
Totally. Yep. Channel that the right way. So, obviously you've had quite a career. Inside of the corporate world, building your own businesses, now helping entrepreneurs of all kinds connect and, further build their own businesses. But just based on the fact that I have a podcast called Guts, Grit, and Great Business, do you mind sharing, one or two of the hardest decisions that you've had to make in business, or, times where things were a little rough and how you got through that?
Yeah. So we can get back to that mountaintop. When I was on the top of the mountaintop, very, very unhappy that I had this business that was up and running and I didn't want to do it anymore. Well, I shared with you that I'd been able to sell several businesses previously, so I wanted to position it for sale. And while I'm doing this fun activity with my son, I was also hitting crisis with that because I had told my employees, we're probably going to position for sale and you're welcome to find other jobs or whatever, because I'm very honest and open with that kind of thing. But let me know if you want to stay or whatever. And I positioned it for sale and I could not get anywhere near the pricing I wanted for it. Like it just wasn't even close. And I'm like, wow, this is a gut punch, right? And I don't know how, what I'm going to do with it. Like, I don't want to just close the doors. I have contracts. I have responsibilities. I have to do delivery. I don't want to go back and do it, right? I don't want to get into it anymore. And then while that happened, I actually had two major clients decide that they were going to limit the number of vendors they had. And so actually dropped we actually were dropping off of their list of preferred vendors. Not that we hadn't done great jobs. We actually got 5-star reviews from all of my clients, but they were limiting the number that they were using, which is like, okay, well, the little guys cannot win on that one, right? So it was like this 1, 2, 3 punch that was really, really rough. Well, what I ended up doing is I knew that the business would actually generate more income if we just kept it going and then sort of ran the business. It's hard to say ran it down, but ran it through the finish line, right? And so what I did is I actually promoted one of my employees that was doing a fantastic job. And I said, here's what we're doing. I just want you to continue, but we're not bringing in any new business. I want you to serve our existing clients with excellence, make sure that we meet all of our obligations and beyond. But we're not taking any new clients and we're not taking any new business. And we ended up making tons more money from that than I would have had I sold it for the lesser amount that I wanted. So it ended up turning into a cash machine. But the one thing that I did that I thank myself for is that I did not go back into it to rescue it, because I was at this point where I was like, it needs me, right? Like it needs me to get back into it, to continue it. And if I walk away from it, it's going to slowly go away. And that was a really hard decision, but it was the right one. And being able to set that down and know just because I was good at something doesn't mean that I was supposed to do it for the rest of my life was a huge, huge relief. And they don't always turn out, sunshine and rosies and like, oh, you got $1 million business and your life is happy forever after. It's not always, it's like, wow, I didn't want to do this. And now, like drama's happening and I don't find another drama, right? And to be able to just to say, all right, I'm going to set this down and I'm going to move in a different direction is difficult. But it was the right move at the time. And I'm so glad on the other side that I did not go in to rescue it and go back and make it work. I was at the time in corporate and everywhere. I was very much a make it work kind of person, like give it to Kimberly and she'll make it work. And I fight through anything and make it all work and blah, blah, blah. I actually wore it like a badge of honor, like I'm the make it work girl kind of thing. What a mistake that was in my life. Really just being able to settle into law of attraction and feel, the universe is here to take care of us. We're not just going to sit on the couch and eat bonbons, but at the same time, we're going to allow it not to, like, we don't have to be the ones to make it all work. Some of the parts are going to be bigger than us. Some of the parts are going to be not in our control, and we're going to have to allow that to happen. And that shift was huge for me.
That was such a great example. The piece about being able to say no, right? So much of, I think, what defines our success, even in business, is what we say no to, not always just what we say yes to. And also that piece about pushing through. I think so many people, especially in the entrepreneurial world, we pride ourselves on being problem solvers, right? And creative, and like we're going to figure out a way. And sometimes it does end up feeling like pushing a rock up a hill, right? And we just keep doing it. So yeah, that shift and your shift to law of attraction and, really getting your mind around whether or not that approach worked for you. There's a book I'm reading. It's May McCarthy is the author, and I think it's like 7 Laws of Spirituality in Business. But she has a quote in there that I just loved. I mean, it's very simple and it seems like so obvious, like, I don't do hard, right? Yeah. And I was like, how would that be if more of us in the entrepreneurial field just said, like, put our stake in the ground and just said, like, I don't do hard. And that's not to say that we're not going to have hard days. Like you said, we're not going to have tough times, but as a daily mantra, it does not have to be hard, right?
Yeah. And that whole we're going to power through thing can really be exhausting, right? Yeah. That's how entrepreneurs burn out. And then they feel like failures because their business failed. And they're not a failure. It's just that particular business failed. And many of them do. You're not alone, like that's like, oh, big surprise. Another business failed, but that doesn't mean you're a failure. And just pick yourself up and see what else you can create out there in the world, because we need you. And that's my message for entrepreneurs is be you, right? Be the authentic you, be the person who built a business that they, didn't love by accident, be like out on that mountaintop, being like, please, are there answers up here? And there aren't, right? Be you, because 2 reasons. One, everybody else is taken. So you might as well just be you. That's number 1. And number 2 is we need you. We need you that you are. And if you show up trying to be somebody else, trying to be, that your mentor, or doing it exactly the way Gary Vee does, or exactly the way Tony Robbins does, or exactly the way anybody else does, we're not going to get your special secret sauce that's more important than all of what you could have learned from somebody else, right? Yeah. We want you. We want the authentic you. We want the real you. And being vulnerable does not mean you are weak. It actually means you are strong. So share with us the you that you are, because we need you to come here and lead and give us your special sauce.
Oh, I love that. Well, Kimberly, for folks that are listening and are like, oh, I've got to connect with Kimberly. I want to learn more. I want to connect with her and her business. Where can they find you online? Where do you like people to go?
Yeah, so the best way you can do that you can join the conversation is to join the Facebook group. So you can go to entrepreneursrocketfuel.com/Facebook. That's entrepreneurs with an S, rocketfuel.com/Facebook, and join the community and the conversation. We would love to have you. As soon as you join, we're going to send you some great information about entrepreneurship and some great freebies, and you're going to love the community. It's not a paid community. It's completely free to join. You can even share your logos and who you are and how you show up in the world. You can share your events. You can share your freebies with the community. It's really about helping entrepreneurs get to the next level.
Oh, that's so fabulous. So if you're listening, you can also check out Kimberly's bio, some additional information. We'll have her link there, and anything else you want us to share, Kimberly, at legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. Kimberly, it's been so fun to see you again and connect with you today. What final thoughts do you have for folks that are still listening? What do you want to leave them with?
Yeah. Be yourself, but then go out there and show up in the world. It's not easy to be an entrepreneur, but if it's in your heart and it's what you want to do, absolutely go after it. It's a lot of fun out here. The water's warm.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Kimberly. I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Safe travels.
Thank you for joining us today on the Guts, Grit, and Great Business Podcast. We hope that we've added a little fuel to your tank, some coffee to your cup, and pep in your step to keep you moving forward in your own great adventures. For key takeaways, links to any resources mentioned in today's show, and more, see the show notes, which can be found at legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast, and if you enjoyed today's conversation, please give us some stars and a review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast, so others will find us too. Keep up the great work you are doing in the world, and we'll see you next week.